This is a rat race. But I'm no rat. I'm a fucking turtle. Ninja turtle. So which one's your favorite? I like Michelangelo.
You are watching Body Dots.
We need to have a little chat about Gary Neville, and while we're at it, why don't I do it in a Gary Neville style? This hyperbolic, neurotic, self-important, annoying little wanker has been pissing me off recently. He went from the captain of the club I love, someone who I thought represented people like me from my background, to a capitalistic, champagne socialist who's probably grew up to be someone his younger self would hate, and I do too. Right, let's get into it. Gary Neville, a player who wore the United badge with pride and loyalty, a high-ranking officer in the Red Army, creating nightmares for the opposition in the theatre of dreams. But today, we're looking beyond the badge, and more so, the devil he became once he no longer represented the famous United crest. Before we do that, let's have a little deep dive into his past. Compared to most of his teammates, Gary grew up a bit more privileged. Both of his parents had sway in the sporting world, given they both played cricket and netball. This allowed them to get their sons into any cricket or football team they desired. Now don't get me wrong, the Nevilles still had to work and train hard, but coming from such a stable environment and having parents with sway in the sporting world would be a huge advantage compared to most of the football players coming from council estates and troubled backgrounds. But that's not exactly their fault, so I won't hold it against them. Oh wait, I'm supposed to be doing this Gary Neville style, aren't I? So, they're all fucking scumbags who just got everything handed to them on a plate. Absolute scum, mate. Entitled little fuckers. As a player, Gary was known for his unwavering loyalty and antagonising rival fans, which is a shame, because now he just antagonises every football fan. Once he retired, he took up a coaching job with England.
Interrupting you, that's obviously the big picture. In terms of the summer, why were the 6 changes in that game? Why?
If you read what I put in my book 4 or 5 years ago, and to be fair, they're obviously Roy's decisions. I'd always felt that England teams ran out of steam. You've been in tournaments 2004 and 6 where literally lads were dead on the feet, the same 11 played every game, not trusting the squad.
I agree with that.
No, not trusting the squad.
If you don't win the first game, the second game is massively important. It's huge.
It was the third game we changed the 6 players. It was the third game.
Was it the third game?
Yeah, it was the third game. So we were 4 points. Actually needed to win, felt very confident, trusted in the squad.
You needed to win to get top of the group.
No, trusted in the squad. I think 2 of the changes, to be fair, most people would have said weren't changes. Because if you remember, Vardy came on in the second game, Sturridge came on in the second game, did well. So those were changes that I think were welcome at the time. So you're talking about 4 changes. Walker and Rose have been rotated. We generally felt that they would need 1 game break with the energy that they put into the games. So from that point of view, I actually felt it was the right decision. I still believe it's the right decision, and I wouldn't change anything, and it wasn't my decision ultimately, but I support Roy in everything that he did with those decisions. And from my point of view, I'd seen England managers play the same 11 players and then us fall off the edge of a cliff in terms of physicality in 2004 and 6. So actually to think about having confidence in the squad, you could say it was a risk. Of course it's a risk, but it's a risk actually in the past, not changing players, not trusting in the squad, and we trusted in all the players. We didn't see a massive difference between Klein and Walker, or between, if you like, the players who came in. We didn't see a massive difference in sort of quality. It wasn't if you were dropping Beckham, Gerrard and Scholes. You were dropping players who actually were coming in for players who were still equally as good.
Did not, though, going out to Iceland just feel like what might have been?
No, it felt worse than that, Dave. It felt worse than that. Going out to Iceland, I mean, ultimately, the ultimate thing is that you're no longer in a job. When you lose to Iceland in a tournament, it felt terrible, shocking for the players, for Roy, for Ray, for myself, for all the people who were there who'd worked so hard over 2 years. You remember, for 2 years we'd been pretty good. There was a lot of optimism. We'd beaten Germany, we'd done well against Holland and France. We were actually really confident. The build-up, we got wins. And we played well in the first couple of games. We played well against Slovakia, found them taking the chances. And I think last 60 minutes against Iceland, I could never explain that to you. I've watched it back twice and can't explain what happened on that pitch. I cannot explain. I've never seen those players before like that in a game. I don't think there'd been any sort of, inkling that this was going to come. know, if you look at sort of where we were in the previous games, we hadn't won the game against Slovakia, we hadn't won the game against Russia, but we kept playing the right way, we kept trying to do the right things. But against Iceland, it just completely was a performance that we'd not seen for 2 years.
After a bit of a disaster with England, he went from a fire to a frying pan. He had a mate who owned Valencia. You know that massive club in Spain? It's probably in the top 4 for most famous Spanish football clubs. Yeah, that's the one. Well, his mate owned it, and he decided that Gary Neville, with no former managerial experience, would be a great fit. You know how it goes with nepotism and all that jazz.
What do you shout in training in Spanish now?
Rapido. Rapido. Yeah, quicker.
And presión. And,
Presión, yeah. But I think a lot of the football language, it's you stick an O on it, and an English word, just stick an O on it, you're all right. They'll understand it at the moment.
I don't think it works like that.
Not quite. It's an R or no. No, I won't sleep well tonight, for your information. I didn't like what I saw. The Valencia fans didn't deserve that tonight. And we've got to recover incredibly quickly. You know, I think most teams have tried everything against Barcelona. Some teams have pressed high and then they blow up after 15-20 minutes. Some teams drop off and the same can happen. We adopted the game plan that we adopted against Barcelona in the Mestalla, and we adopted the game plan that we adopted against Real Madrid. Obviously, with a different execution.
Been waiting 6 months for this. Let's go.
To be honest with you, you learn a lot. You learn a lot in terms of the decision making, the responsibility of the fact that there seems to be a problem every single day. Problem every single day appears from somewhere, an injury or a problem with a player or something in the crowd or whatever it might be. I think that you know the decision making of obviously being a head coach. I've been a coach obviously with England for 3 years under Roy, so I understood sort of the decision making process that went on. But when you're actually there yourself, and I learnt a lot living in a foreign country for the first time in my life, moving away from sort of where I lived was a massive challenge for me, but I enjoyed it. And I wish I could have stayed there for 18 months. Not the idea of coming back and not completing what I wanted to do, which was to sort of do well for the club first and foremost, but to not come back to 4 months. I was having lessons every single day, to come back without the language under wraps, to come back without the experience of wanting to be there and being able to sort of get to a summer where I could have more time with the team and get my own players and things like that. But the reality is the results were shocking, and you know, when you go to that club, you're told very early on, when the white handkerchiefs come out, you're off. I took the Valencia job, and the more I think about it, purely because of the fact that I knew the owner, and I felt like I was loyal to him, and I felt like I owed him something because he believed in me in terms of the businesses and stuff. But I didn't want to be a manager. I didn't want to be a coach. I genuinely didn't. But then I said no to Peter the first time, and then he just said, look, I'd really like you to do it for me. I don't want to bring a manager in now because I know that they'll want to sign players in the January transfer window. I went in December. They'll want to, and I just need to get to the end of the season. And he said, just do it for me for 5 months. So I went in on a 5-month contract and didn't even last the 5 months because you can't be arrogant enough, I don't think, to think that you're going to be a good coach if you're not thinking about coaching every single day of the week, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
And the lessons from it, the learnings from it, like, I think were massive for me about saying no. I mean, you were probably the first, but he used to say to us in the dressing room, no is a sentence. I remember him looking in my mirror in the morning thinking I look ill. I remember that.
After how long were you there?
I'd say probably that was February, probably 2 or 3 months. I'm thinking I'm ill. I literally looked at myself and thought, oh my God. But I remember we played 3 times against Bilbao in the Europa League quarter-final and a league game, and Valverde was the coach. And I remember him stood there. He played a different system than I thought he would, and then he changed during the game. And I remember thinking, I am nowhere near that.
Levels.
Honestly, and I remember that time thinking Valverde. You think about a coach on a job. Because you know what, I blew my mind.
But you weren't expected to be on his level.
No, but what I'm saying to you is I felt like almost like massively inferior. But Roy, you know something? I was watching the game. I believe I can see a game from a gantry, and I can see everything that's going on, and there's no one can get much past us. You put yourself down, stood on the touchline, and see a game where all you see is legs, or you're down in a bench and all you see is legs. And how you think of the game tactically, or how they spot things, I have no idea. Because I just remember thinking,
what's actually going on out there? You know what I mean?
Neville's experience in the league really highlighted his arrogance, lack of foresight and preparation. Like my man generally thought he was just privileged enough to be able to compete with the best managers in the world, mano y mano. But sadly for Gary, not all nepotism ends up like his United career. So he binned off the job and went on a mini retirement.
You can never really retire if you love work and you are relentless. But what you can have is mini retirements during the year, and that's what I've tried to do. I don't do it very well. So, for instance, this weekend, I'm going to Spain Friday till Monday morning. I thought that's the mini retirement. So it's a weekend. It's a weekend. It's a mini retirement. It's where I basically can say for 3 days, I'm there and I'm basically taking it, I don't think about work. Now I will, and sometimes some of my best ideas come when I'm on these types of trips. But then in 6 weeks, I'll have another mini retirement for 5 days or 4 days, rather than thinking I'm going to stop for 6 months and sort of have a sabbatical. That's not probably going to happen with people like you or I, because we just basically don't work that way. So to have lots of mini retirements during the year, what I've tried to do in the last few years, I'm not sure I'm doing it very successfully.
They're called holidays.
Then he transitioned into punditry, and at first he wasn't too bad. Quite nervous and shaky, but he came across as humble and logical. But not long after, once his feet are under the table, his true personality comes out. Constant contradictions and biases to the point where you can't ignore it. I'd watch a game with my old man, and every 2 minutes or so my dad would be shouting, "What the fuck is he watching? Why is he saying that? He's done nothing wrong. Is he fucking blind? He's doing my fucking head in him. Wish he'd just fucking tell us what's happening on the fucking football match." And so on like that. It's almost like he has cultural bias at times. For example, Paul Pogba could be in a great position to receive a pass and not receive it, so he'll throw his hands in the air in frustration. Neville will grunt something like, "Ooh, look at him. Look how arrogant and selfish he is. What kind of example is that setting to his teammates? What a spoilt brat." And then someone like Declan Rice can do the same thing, and he'll presently exclaim, "That's the sign of a true leader who strives for the best for his team. What a top lad." Now they're just examples and not direct quotes, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if they are. I chose those examples because they're exactly what he does. As he's critiquing a player that he wants to start a negative narrative against, he would judge his character and say things like arrogant, selfish, spoiled, but does the opposite for the guys he deems top lad. Next time you see him talk about players, look out for who he calls a top lad. It'll look like an EDL lineup. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, another good example of this is Bruno Fernandes and Harry Kane. Both are famous for drawing fouls and diving. Kane's method is actually quite dangerous. He jumps up and purposely comes down on his opponents as if they backed into him, often landing elbows on the way down. When Gary sees this, he usually describes him as a wily veteran who's just playing the dark arts. But when Bruno does it, he gets called a petulant child and a cheater, and he doesn't even harm anyone in the process. It's the same with referees. They're both captains, so it's both of their duties to speak to the refs on behalf of the players. When Kane does it, he's being a leader and fighting for his team. But when Bruno does it, he's just whinging and trying to gain an advantage.
So, I mean, we're all in agreement. Decore puts his hand up. Sean Dyche, Stellini, everybody said that ultimately he can't do this and it should be sent off. I suppose the only debate that we're having is whether Harry Kane, whether he should go down.
Whistle was blown there because that was a foul under Mari Gray. But then there was this challenge which was unnecessary, as Sean Dyche said. And that led to this tangle.
Yeah. And then I think this is the angle I think's really... This is the angle that we all really wanted to see, because to me, look, I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration here with James Carragher. So he said to me it was a hand in the face. A hand in the face is where you get that one, right? That Harry Kane should never go to ground. And I said to Carragher, I said the only thing I've had before is when someone puts their clasp, if you like, like the claw, and they just go a little bit on your eyes. It does shock you. I'm not saying Harry Kane should go down, but that one there, which is what that one is. I wanted to go. Yeah, but that one, to be fair, it does throw you back. That is very different than a hand in the face.
What would a punch look like?
Listen, the debate is not about a red card, and Harry Kane should not be going down for that. He should not be going down. Now, it can still be a red card by putting your hand in someone's face. The Corey is wrong. I'm sure Sean Dyche will tell him that. But I mean, we were having a debate when it was going on. Now, I wouldn't go down there as a player. I don't know. There's nowhere near enough to let you go down. And again, if I'd done that on the pitch, I'd be embarrassed. And if I watched my own son, who's a player, if I saw him do that, yeah, it might help his team win. If the opposition are down to 10 men, it gives them an advantage. When he got back in the car, I'd just say, what were you doing there? Don't ever do that again on a football pitch. I disagree.
Look, I'm going back, I'm a lot nicer now than I was 15 years ago. Honestly, I think that I lived in a dressing room whereby my striker, if Harry Kane stands up there, we're talking about winning Champions League football or staying in the Premier League with relegation. And if Harry Kane stands up there, that might have been a yellow card because it would have been deemed as being just a little handoff. Right, Harry Kane's gone down, whether he should have gone down or not, it's to make sure that Decore does get sent off. It's a part of the game which, to be fair, people don't like at home, and I've said this on this show for 12 years, but in our dressing room, if our forward was that we're there to win leagues, we're there to win a game, people might call it cheating, but you can't put your hand in someone's eyes with a clasp like that.
It was Ernest.
But what if that was one of your forwards that was playing? If you're playing in a game for Liverpool and it happened to Luis Suarez and you went down like that, you're going to have a problem with Luis Suarez?
I'm not going to have a problem with him. I'm not going to have a problem with him, your own player doing that, but I don't like it. I might be contradicting myself here, and it come up on social media.
How can that not be his eye?
You're doing a slow. It's just something that happens.
How can that not be his eye? Both fingers. I mean, you can see one finger in one eye and the other one's in the other.
So my problem is, I've got no problem with people diving or trying to win.
For an elbow, it's on his chest. Now he holds his face. That's embarrassing for Bruno Fernandes. It's on his chest and he goes down.
Say that Harry Kane should have scored maybe 2 or 3 goals, could have had a penalty. He's not right, Harry Kane. There's something obviously not right with him at the moment. He doesn't look happy at all. But that's a bad day, that, for Nuno. It's a bad day for those players. I think when you mention body language, I said it after the Everton game earlier on in the season when Cristiano sort of walked off, and I thought he put pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's run off again tonight. He ran off at Watford when the manager was going to get sacked and everyone knew he was going to get sacked, and at Norwich. And I think that Bruno's whinging like that. They're the 2 senior players in that dressing room. It's devastating for the younger players if the 2 best players in the team are looking at the others as if you're not good enough. And I think that Cavani takes that away because I don't think he wilts in the presence of Ronaldo or of Fernandes. I think he stands up to them. I think he helps the other younger players on the pitch. I think he needs to be on the pitch because they need to get rid of that whinging attitude. They really do. And you've got to go over and clap the fans at the end of the game. I don't care how you've played. I don't care what the result is. Get over to them fans, clap them, walk off with your teammates. You have to do that, particularly when you're the best player in the world and one of the greatest players of all time.
This whinging has upset you. Is it Bruno and Ronaldo particularly that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's annoyed me for about 2 months. And your best players in your team, it's devastating when those players are giving that look and that body language towards the younger ones. They have to help them. They have to be the father, the grandparent in the team. They have to make sure. I made massive mistakes as a young player at Manchester United, but I had great senior players who, they would have a go at me, but they would also put their arm around me and they'd help me. And I don't get the feeling that's happening. I think there's something wrong in there.
Now this example is what inspired the whole video. So the Ballon d'Or, if you don't know, is the most prestigious individual trophy a player can receive. It's based on how well they played overall, the impact they made on the game both on and off the pitch, and it's also for fair play. The majority of people had Vinicius Jr. down as the favourite, but a player called Rodri won instead. Vinicius Jr.'s team, Real Madrid, refused to turn up to the event as a protest because they apparently got told their player would win. So given Real Madrid was informed Vinicius would win, he decided to fly his family over from Brazil. Booked out a place for a party in the city where the ceremony was taking place, and another place for a party when he arrives back in Spain. And from what I've seen on social media, Rodri had at least one place booked and flew his family over for the party too. And I know you're probably thinking, I don't give a fuck about their parties, right? Yeah, me too. But look at the state of this clip and how they've attacked Vinicius. And keep in mind, they're not attacking Rodri at all. He literally did the same thing apart from boycotting the award.
Rodri has won the Ballon d'Or. I'm delighted it's gone to a player who has contributed week in, week out consistently at such a high level for his club and his country, winning the European Championship. They weren't favourite, by the way. They were nowhere near favourites for winning the Euro, Spain. But he's absolutely immense, and he's immense for Manchester City last season. Now, I can understand people in Madrid and people in Brazil being upset that their boy hasn't won it, because he's a special talent. I feel in doing what they've done, to disrespect Rodri in the way in which they have, I think it naturally does that. I think it's absolutely outrageous.
Vinicius Junior flew over a bunch of his family from Brazil. Super arrogant. Set up 2 parties. One in Paris after the event, booked a place, organised it. One in Madrid for when he returned home as the number 1. I mean, the arrogance is off the scale. I actually think he should now be disqualified. But the arrogance, Gary, is so outrageous. And then you see Rodri with his acceptance speech and everything he said about how he's winning this for the likes of Iniesta and Xavi and all the Spanish players who never got to win it. You just think the difference is it's actually gross what he did.
Vinicius is a special talent. He's amazing. He's going to win it one day, I'm sure. But the idea that you try and take the glory away and sort of pull the sort of spotlight away from a player who is, I get it, he's a fans player, he's a player's player. He's someone who will be respected all around the world. And a good man, I just think he's classless. I agree with you completely.
Same thing happens off the pitch too. His new best mate, Jamie Carragher, was driving on a motorway when a young girl in the car next to him was taunting him. He responded by letting his window down and spitting at the girl, all while driving on a motorway or a highway for my bootstrap people.
Jamie Carragher there, look. Jamie! 2-1! 2-1! 2-1, mate! A lucky Jamie, lad! 2-1, lad! Oh! Jamie Carragher spot on the door. Nice. Nice, very nice, Jamie Carragher. Where did it hit you? Seriously, where did it hit you?
Not a word said by Gary to this day about that. Nope, he can clearly forgive our Jamie for that. But do you know what he finds unforgivable? Marcus Rashford having a party on his birthday. Why was it unforgivable? Well, because his team lost that day, and Neville expects him to go home and whip himself until his skin on his back peels off. I'm only exaggerating a little bit here, but he was absolutely fuming. Which brings me on to his hyperbole. I've noticed this watching United. When he commentates on our games, his criticism is so over the top and personal towards the players and staff. When you go on Twitter, it's like a bloodbath of verbal abuse, because he loves to set the tone and constantly hammer it home. I've seen it with other teams too. I'm not biased like that twat, so I can see it. I remember him calling Arsenal spineless and weak after a defeat once. And on the other end of the spectrum, when Liverpool had that 3-season good patch under Klopp, he was calling them the greatest team ever. This is just creating impossible standards, both on the positive and negative side. It's all too much, and it has an after effect on social media, which is clear to see. He's set up an environment where football fans have to find fault in everything and be extra condemning in their judgment. Or they have to pretend something is perfect and faultless, which just sets fans up for being way too passionate and having too much invested into players, clubs and staff. So the moment they let them down, they take it personal. At the end of the day, Gary Neville isn't just a guy speaking into a bubble. Football is watched by billions and millions in this country alone. TVs in houses, restaurants, pubs and shops all have it on constantly. So what he says carries a lot of weight, and we can see the after effects. We've seen him whip United fans up into a friendly to the point they rioted and damaged their own stadium in protest. The relentless targeting of players in a negative sense, but football culture. There's no surprise to me that the racism towards black players for England risen at the same time as his punditry career. It's no coincidence the rampant xenophobia we see at our football grounds and on social media towards foreign players. And there's no surprise that there's even certain former football players who have become pundits who happen to be female Gary Neville entirely. I just think he's the best example of someone leading the way in this new style of football punditry. We need to get this under control before our beautiful game reverts back to what it was like a few decades ago. And football is just that, a beautiful game. It's just a game. Relax. Those players out there are fortunate to be gifted enough to play this game for us. So let's just appreciate it a bit more. I say this as a United fan, but I find it hard to hate my team because they literally won everything for me as a child. So I feel like the least I owe them is my patience while they try and climb back up the ladder. Same goes for your team too. Football has its cycles and everyone has their day, but at the end of the day, when they cross those white lines and the whistle goes off, it's still the same game. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching the video. If you like this, you'll like my podcast called Side Boob, I do with my friend. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. See you in a bit.
This is a rat race, but I'm no rat. I'm a fucking turtle, ninja turtle. So which one's your favorite? I like Michelangelo.
You are watching Body Dots.